Welcome into the Thunder Basketball Universe presented by COOP Ale Works. We are off the road and back home in OKC in the studio, and I've got special guest Royce Young here with me. Paris is away, but we'll be recapping the second incredible comeback win for the Thunder over the Lakers in 8 days, and we'll try to hold down the fort with Paris gone.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll keep tough. You all in good standing here. Let's get right to it. It's the Thunder Basketball Universe.
Pressure on the Lakers with this offensive possession. That is a logo SGA 3, and he knocks it down. What a shot on the L, 7 feet behind the three-point line.
Royce, we'll get to our games in a little bit, but I feel like we'd be burying the lead, and as two writers, we can't possibly do that if we don't talk about the 19-point comeback win by the Thunder over the Lakers last night. We're recording this on Friday. I'm here in the studio, bleary-eyed. Royce,
barely here.
Very, very well rested. We landed at 4 o'clock in the morning last night, but a lot of good vibes coming off of that happy flight back from Los Angeles. Royce, as you were watching this game and seeing it unfold, when were things starting to percolate to you that the Thunder had a chance in this one?
Well, obviously, it was another, comeback where, they fell behind in the first half. But, I really thought there was a couple critical moments in the first half that were just stabilizing. Ty Jerome hit a couple threes. Really, that corner three that he was kind of fading out of bounds. Ty's really good at that shot, by the way. That was kind of where I think that the Thunder started to kind of believe that they were getting back in the ball game. And obviously, they made a good push into halftime and got the lead manageable. But clearly, the third quarter goes by, but clearly it was the fourth quarter, Nick, where the Thunder really just kind of found a new level. And I think it was a 13-0 run that extended to a 21-11-ish kind of run. But to do that on the road in a situation at Staples Center against a very veteran team, like the most veteran team they can be, in the Los Angeles Lakers, those moments they're invaluable for this group to kind of experience that. But again, going back, I just think that within the context of a 48-minute game, you can fixate on something like a 13-0 run where there's big shots and big moments, and we all know what some of those big moments are, and I'm sure we'll talk about them. But it is some of those littler things that just kind of keep you plugged into the game and keep it going from a 19-point deficit to a 28-point deficit to something worse, to where you can trim that 19-point deficit to something like 11 or 8, and now you feel you're back in the ball game and it's possession by possession. And I think a lot of those shots, specifically by Ty Jerome in the first half, were really important.
Yeah, I remember the one that you were talking about from Jerome where he's clapping in the corner for that ball, and when a guy's doing that, he's feeling it. Right. And it's good to see him with that level of confidence, given the fact that I think he'd only played like 54 total minutes leading up to his 21-minute performance against the Lakers, where that was a season high for him.
He flipped that first Lakers game, by the way, too, when he came on the floor. He was a big part of that first original run.
Well, that's something that Mark Daigneault has done throughout the course of the season. In the first Lakers comeback win, the 26-pointer last Wednesday, Mark played 13 guys in that game. It was just threw Gabriel Deck out there as just like a little spark plug, and he's not been afraid to use his players in a variety of different ways.
Yeah, and he even kind of joked after that game, the 26-point game. So he was asked kind of about the rotation, quote unquote, and he kind of laughed and he was like, "What a rotation? We're not really sticking to one right now." But I think that kind of does demonstrate how resourceful Mark Daigneault's trying to be with this roster. Obviously there's some experimental elements as he's kind of evaluating a lot of these young players and figuring out exactly what kind of combinations stick really well together. But also just, I think it goes into the mentality of so many players in this team of being ready to play. And a guy like Ty Jerome, again, he's a great example of this. His primary role is to shoot, and that's a hard thing to stay ready for. You're going through mental reps on the bench, trying to imagine yourself in situations. But when you walk on the floor and it's like, okay, now here's your chance. You're open. Please make this. Like, that's not an easy job to produce with. And I think that really kind of goes into kind of the preparation that happens for a lot of these guys, the reps they get in practice, trying to simulate these sort of things to be able to step on the floor and then produce when they get their chance.
Royce, this was the 14th comeback in Thunder history of 19 or more points. 7 of those have happened since the 2019-20 season. What's going on with that? What's been happening in Oklahoma City to allow that, or is it something maybe to do with the larger machinations of the game right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nick. I think there's probably a few combinations of things that, for one, I just think it is kind of in the Thunder DNA to be a resilient group. I think that goes back to original incarnations of this team, is that it's just part of the culture to not quit. And so you have to stay invested within the game mentally. But I think that kind of extends into where some of the modern game has trended, that if you can continue to produce efficient possessions and stay invested in sticking to kind of your guns, it's often just kind of just natural human inclination for opposing teams. When they get up, they let down their guard and they get a little sloppy. You can kind of get a little stat stuffy. You can kind of try to like make that extra pass when you might have had a better shot, or you can try to step back and shoot a little tougher three, and you're going for those dagger plays. And so they start kind of generating more low efficiency possessions. And then if you stick to your guns and you try to continue to produce high efficiency ones, then you can start to chip away in that, that 19-point lead. You're not going to get it all back. It's not, everybody says the NBA is a game of runs, but it's not always just a 12-0 run. Mm-hmm. It's a 6-2 burst.
Right.
In a series of minutes where you hit 2 threes and they get a 2. And then now you're starting to trim it away. And, to your point again, Nick, the 3-point shot has just changed the game so dramatically where you can make up ground in a way that you used to. So, to kind of summarize it, I think that it starts with just a resilient mindset, but within that resiliency, it's not necessarily playing harder. It's just staying invested and resilient to your plan and to your strategy, which is to produce efficient offense.
Yeah, and to your point, the intentionality around efficiency can also lead to the high volatility. In addition to the three-point line is the free throw line. And when teams are so dead set on being as efficient as possible, they're scoring without the clock running when they're at the free throw line, and they're scoring in bunches from behind the 3-point line. And when those things ebb and flow, sometimes you can get these wild swings within the course of games. And something that Mark Daigneault has talked about is, despite the fact that this is the youngest roster in the NBA, this team in particular has a really innate sense of just how long these games are. And I know that sounds silly. They're all 48-minute games, but just truly having the wherewithal to hit singles. That's something that Derek Favors did at a really high level last night for the Thunder.
Well, you can feel like you're beat when you're down 22. You're on the road against the Lakers, or 19 in this situation, and you're a young group, and you're just like, well, pack it up.
Right.
We're going home tonight. We're getting in at 5 a.m. Forget it. Yeah. But I mean, like you were saying, Nick, I just think that you may feel like it feels like a long game, but just because it's second quarter doesn't feel over.
Exactly. And that defensive rebound that you get, that putback bucket that you get just to keep the scoreboard moving, even when the other team is knocking down a three, you're at least just maintaining that pacing within the game, and it's not completely falling apart on you as long as you're just chugging away. Want to talk to you just about the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. Recently, Shai,
fun.
Recently, Shai's been going nuts in third quarters, averaging almost 11 points per game in third quarters. It was the fourth where he really dominated, and he accounted for 20 of the final 27 Thunder points in that game with either his own buckets or assists.
Yeah, I mean, he was awesome, and I think that one of the things that's just really struck me about SGA over the last 2 seasons specifically is just his composure in these moments. And, I do think it is something that he probably has kind of picked up from Chris Paul in the season that they spent together, which, again, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Nick, that, Chris Paul kind of famously led the NBA in clutch time points, but SGA, I think, was number 2 or 3 right there behind him. So it's not like this guy is just coming out of nowhere and figuring out how to score in crunch time. He's been there, done that. And for a young player, he's experienced some high leverage situations already. Now he is somebody that has the ball in his hands, and there's a lot more focus on him. You see the way a lot of these opposing teams are basically sending doubles at him, like it's almost high school, trying to get the ball out of that guy's hands because they know of what kind of damage he can do. But again, I just go back to just his composure. He really just doesn't really force anything too much. And I know that might feel a little bit ironic with the fact that he hit basically a half court shot,
34-footer.
But to me, what's so unique about that is it feels so uncharacteristic to Shai because he is somebody that plays so under control. And look, we can celebrate the ball went in the basket, and that was awesome. And was it a great shot? I don't know. I think Mark Daigneault was kind of even like, that's probably not my favorite shot, but it did go in, so we could all live with that.
I think the element of surprise of it was what makes it a good shot, right? In those situations, you're trying to take the defense off guard as much as you possibly can. And I thought the juxtaposition of that shot, the 34-footer that left the whole Staples Center crowd stunned, was perfect to go immediately after the play where Shai recognizes a double team coming at him early, gets out of it immediately, gets it to Josh Giddey, and then that gets swung into the corner for a hockey assist for Shai for a wide open Kenrich Williams three-pointer. That shot, that 34-footer, was almost a preemptive strike against what was sure to be another double team.
Do you feel like, that there may be kind of even a residual effect of this? I mean, you see the way that teams guard Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
in late game situations. They are scared for their life that he's going to pull up from the logo, and it really impacts the way that an opposing defense has to approach possessions. I mean, they are so spaced out. The Blazers can run high pick and roll, and it creates a lot of downhill action. And I wonder if there's going to be just kind of this residual effect with somebody like SGA, that if that is indeed something he can put in his bag, which it's something he clearly works on. We've all seen it. But then that can start to extend defenses out, and
it's a warning shot.
Yeah, whether it's even don't come double me, but it's also you got to pick me up.
Right.
And now you're talking about a lot more space on the floor, and for the Thunder system that they play in with a lot of drive and kick action, I think that can create a lot more opportunity in crunch time.
All right. Well, while NBA opposing head coaches think about how they're going to deal with Shai, we're going to take a little break as well. We'll be right back after this.
COOP Ale Works is the proud sponsor of Thunder Basketball Universe. Brewers of the fan favorites F5 IPA and 99-calorie Ice Chest IPA. You'll find those and many more COOP beers at retailers across Oklahoma. Learn more at CoopAleWorks.com.
Okay, we're going to get into our games now. Royce and I, we're going to try to uphold the same standards that Paris does when she's here too. I know you're out there listening, Lawson, so please, give us some positive reviews when you hear us play.
Please.
You can share that again. And just for you listening at home, here's what happens. Each of us get to pick a quote. We've got to quiz the other one on who said it or who that quote was about. And Royce, you get to go first.
Okay, so this is kind of a longer quote, but I'm gonna pick from the middle of it because kind of the part that I feel like would that was kind of the meatiest part. So here it is. It speaks volumes to how unselfish he is as a guy and team-oriented he is because, as I said, he's an all-star caliber player and could have easily called for the ball to make a play. So for him to let me, in that instance, make a play, it speaks volumes to how he is and how unselfish he is.
Ooh, okay. I think this is about Shai, and I think it's said by Josh Giddey.
You're right. It might have been too obvious of a quote, but I really like it.
No, it's good. I would think this was after the first comeback win against the Lakers when Shai acted as a decoy on probably the most high leverage possession of the entire game.
And one of the reasons that I kind of came back to this one, Nick, is just for what we just talked about, kind of the juxtaposition of the second Lakers game.
Right.
And how just because it was one way the first time doesn't mean it has to be the same way the second time. And to me, I was just talking about Shai's poise and composure, and for him to recognize that.
Yeah.
Against the Lakers in the first time around, the play was drawn up and it was a great situation that they used him as a decoy. And in the second time around, even though Josh had a few plays late in the game too, it was just flipped and it was just natural and organic the way it kind of came back around. So I just loved that approach, even from Josh Giddey, who's just a 19-year-old rookie, to have that kind of maturity to recognize what he's got in a teammate in SGA. Right. But also just SGA's mentality in those situations is so impressive.
Well, this is something that Mark has talked about just in terms of sometimes, structural fit or game fit is a little bit overrated as long as you've got the personality fit and the commitment to team fit. And that's clearly what you have. I love the juxtaposition that you just put together there because it was Josh Giddey who kind of ratcheted back a little bit in the fourth quarter on Thursday night in Los Angeles. He didn't really have it going offensively. But he was able to just be a part of the team. He was scrappy. He was rebounding. I think he had 8 rebounds and 8 assists in the game. He wasn't hunting his shot or hunting his own playmaking at the end of the game. And, for a rookie who's had an incredible rookie season thus far, in the bright lights against the Lakers at Staples Center, it might have been very tempting to try to inject yourself into the game.
Yeah.
But as Sam Presti has said from the very beginning of the season since Josh was drafted, this is a guy that understands how to incorporate himself into the group. So nice kind of balance that you see there between those two.
For sure. And again, I think even if you just rewind to the previous even Clippers game, Josh made some big plays in the fourth quarter there. And so there's no formula here. There's no, I think that what you try to kind of assemble with a lot of, especially in closing lineups, is guys that know how to play together. And I think that that's what you have with guys like SGA and Josh, even at their young age.
Okay. My quote.
Okay.
It was from last night, post-game. So we'll see how late you stayed up to watch those Zoom interviews.
I did stay up pretty late to watch them, but we'll see how much I was actually awake for them.
The quote was, that energy, it will always come back to you.
Oh, that's a good quote. And I'm going to say I honestly don't know. I'll take a guess, though.
Yeah.
That energy that will always come back to you. That feels like a kind of feels like a Lou Dort quote because it just feels so applicable to him. But I could see that being like Kenrich Williams.
It is Kenrich Williams. Nice. Yeah, good job. That was Kenny Hustle, and that was after the game when I asked him about just the extra pass play that Shai made to get out of the double team. The ball ends up in Kenrich Williams' hands in the corner for that crucial three with, I think, 1:38 to go, somewhere around there. And in a 107-104 win, that's a pretty big bucket there late to have not in one of your top scorers' hands. Kenrich shot 44% from three off the bench last year. He has not shot it as well this year in the early going, but for that trust to be there with this team in crunch time situations when you've got a guy that's as hot as Shai, again, that energy, it comes back to you when you move the ball that way and when you let the ball find the man.
Well, that's an old basketball adage we've all heard is the ball has energy. But for one thing about K-Rich is that he's a pretty soft-spoken guy, but he sneaks in really quotable lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that for him, he is such a, like, to me, he is like built for crunch time with the scrappy plays, the extra possessions that he creates, his ability to switch and guard so many different players. And even like you said, even though maybe the ball's not going in the basket at a high rate right now, you have full confidence in him if he's got an open three. And he's already hit a few big ones late in games this year. So, that is just such a true element that, like, if you stick with it and you maintain your high level of intensity and energy, at some point it's going to come back to you and it's going to pay off.
Yeah, Kenrich will find his spots as a scorer, as a cutter. We've seen him off the ball making those moves. He scored at the dunker spot last night, which is not usually a spot where a guy who's 6'6", 6'7" is just hanging out. He can put the ball on the deck a little bit and score in the mid-range. I just remember feeling in preseason like, okay, there's something missing when he wasn't on the floor for any of those 4 preseason games. It just feels like he sort of completes.
He's a little bit of a connector.
That's
that's a great point, Nick, that he's got that kind of connective value to him. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he is so versatile. And that's just the style that Mark Daigneault wants to play, is to have guys that just kind of know how to do a lot of different things, kind of 5-tool guys out there. And I think Kenrich really kind of exemplifies that, because he can shoot it, he can dribble it, he can defend, he can pass it, he can score a little bit in an ISO, he can catch and shoot. I mean, there's just so many different areas that he's impactful that, I think that sort of thing, basically any lineup doesn't feel awkward when he's kind of part of it, because – and also, by the way, he just kind of generates random points.
Yeah.
Whether it's just kind of like scrapping away at an offensive board or, coming up with a steal in the open court. He's just somebody that just kind of produces for you.
Yeah. And, one thing that we've seen is him sort of metaphorically, like, putting his arm around Poku there in the second unit. And Mark Daigneault has talked about just Kenrich's ability to recognize guys who he can build a bond with and connect with on the floor, who might be looking for sort of a sparring partner. And they've had a number of different connections there, just as they've tried to get the blender going. And I think, to steal a phrase from The Bachelor, which my wife watches all the time, Kenrich kind of has that emotional intelligence to sort of like recognize who he can like tap into on the floor, and who might be looking for somebody to just be a partner with on the floor.
What is he, 27?
Yeah.
I mean, he is pretty old for this team.
Yeah, he's got some years. He's got some years. He is a dude, as we like to say. And so our next game is called Name That Dude. And so this is a game where we each lay out a stat line, and the other ones got to guess who that guy was. So I will try to name the dude that Royce tells me right now. Okay.
So here's the stat line, and there's a key stat though that I really want to tell the story. So it's you got 14 points on 4 of 10 shooting, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, but a plus 18 in 21 minutes.
Plus 18.
The plus 18 in 21 minutes is the critical factor here.
Was this Bays?
No.
I
got Nick.
14 points. You said how many minutes?
21.
Okay.
I can see what you guessed.
This is Ty Jerome.
Yeah,
this is Ty Jerome. Okay, cool.
Bays scored 14 in 24 minutes.
Okay, all right.
But it's the plus 18.
Yeah.
Ty Jerome.
Yeah,
plus 18.
just like what are your thoughts on what his role on this team can be moving forward? Because there are other guards. I mean, there's a ton of other guards that are a part of this mix. There's a guard playing for the Oklahoma City Blue right now, Trey Mann, who's going to be, getting his shot down the line too. And Ty has such a defined NBA game already that it's not necessarily like they're trying to uncover these
Right.
like new aspects of what he can do.
Right. That's a great way to put it, Nick. And to me, it's like, I remember back, when I was growing up, there was this guy that played baseball named Matt Stairs, and they called him a professional hitter.
Yeah.
That's just what he was. To me, like, Ty Jerome just feels like a professional guard.
Yeah.
He just does professional guard things. He shoots it well. He handles it well. He's scrappy defensively. He's a high IQ player. And, like, he's just going to kind of just, like, be productive on the court for you.
Couldn't you see him just like being in the league for 10 years
Yeah,
and like
for sure.
being in like an excellent third or fourth?
He's kind of like,
yeah.
it's like kind of Scotty Brooks-ish,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like in a way,
Yeah.
like kind of a small guard and like,
Yeah.
but just kind of knows how to stick around. And I think he's really valuable within the practice context. I think he's valuable in the locker room. I think he's just a total pro guy. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily mean that like, oh, he's earned minutes, he's going to be part of the rotation from here on out, just stamp his name in ink. I think that though he is somebody, and Mark Daignault, I think, has kind of looked to him in situations of like, okay, we need to find a little something different. We need a different mix on the court here. We need a little more ball handling, a little more shooting. And I think Ty Jerome is just the type of player that is just kind of ready to go in those situations. He's kind of like, in case of emergency, you break glass and you get him on the court. And like you said, I mean, I think that there are going to be times where he doesn't play a minute in a game.
Yeah.
Because it may have not dictated that. But I think he has proven that he can be an impactful guy when he comes in.
Yeah, and just kind of to pull the curtain back a little bit, and you may all be able to see this from social media, but like he and Shai are tight. Those guys are so close. They talk all the time. When you see Shai come off the court after that 34-footer, the first guy he's going to is
Right.
Ty Jerome, and it's just such a cool connection. After the game, Shai went way out of his way to just praise the readiness that Ty has, and I think you also see when Ty is on the floor, I mean, he is like the quintessential coach's best friend point guard. He is always standing right there on the sideline next to Mark Daignault during free throws or, a little stoppage in play, like, hey, what are we doing here next? What, kind of plotting and scheming with the head coach.
Yeah, for sure. He's such an interesting player, and I think you said it really well, Nick, that he just feels like somebody that you're going to look down the line in like 12 years and you'll be like, that guy had a really nice NBA career.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's my stat line. 6 points in 53 seconds.
Oh, baby. That's a doozy there to try to figure out.
This is not a full game stat line. This is in fact from this. I'll give you a little bit more of a hint. This was deep in the fourth quarter. In fact, I believe the final 53 seconds of the game.
You're not going to tell me which game though, are you?
Oh no, the most recent game. Last night's game against the Lakers.
6 points in 53 seconds. Who scored 6 points in 53 seconds? I mean,
It was not Shai.
It was not Shai. Man, how am I not realizing this? I guess I was so blindsided by SGA's fireworks show that I can't think of anything else. Mike Muscala?
Not Mike Muscala.
When did he scored a little flurry of points, but that was probably
Yeah, he had 6 points in the game, but those all came earlier in the fourth quarter. He actually played way fewer minutes than I realized. It seemed like he was out there
He just
for
had a couple of big plays.
But
He hit that big trailing three, and he had the and one.
his rebounding also was excellent. Just over the course of the two games in Los Angeles, in the game against the Clippers, he was a monster on the glass.
Yeah.
But
Okay, well,
back to the topic at hand. Lou Dort had 6 points, including 4 crucial free throws down the stretch.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that is something very overlooked with Lou, is that his free throw shooting has greatly improved over the last couple of years. But as he stood at the line, I was kind of like, okay, Lou, you need to put these things down right here. Because those are when you talk about young teams figuring out ways to win, like that is such a separating factor of like making your free throws. Don't split them, make them both.
Right.
And Lou stepped up in big ways and definitely did that.
Well, so I think it was sort of a microcosm of the tale of the first half for Lou, and to being able to close out the game with poise with those free throws. And similarly, how the Thunder did not execute in the final 3 minutes against the Clippers when Paul George basically single-handedly spurred on that 15-1 closing run on Monday, compared to how the Thunder handled crunch time against the Lakers. And it just, to be able to show that growth after a day of practice and, 2 film sessions, and then to be able to have the poise to close out in crunch time. Lou did not have a good majority of that game. He missed at the rim. He missed tons of jump shots. He took a lot of threes, and most of them didn't go down. But he got himself back to neutral. He didn't let a little bit of light pushing and shoving get into his head. It just he went to the line. The whole crowd was against him, and he knocked down the free throws when they counted.
Yeah, I mean that's an excellent point just too of of just looking at a guy like Lou that, I think that his responsibilities can kind of fluctuate game to game. And, sometimes I think he is somebody that can be your primary scorer.
Right.
When Lou gets it going, he's a capable scorer. He can slash, he can shoot it. And other times he can kind of gear down and really kind of dig into some of his elite skills. But, I think for everybody, just like you said, Nick, in just kind of taking what didn't go right against the Clippers and some of the sloppy possessions late, not, kind of low efficiency outcomes, and then learning from that and now taking that into much better kind of controlled, composed possessions. That was a really stark contrast, I think, from one game to the next.
Lou took a big jump from his rookie year to his second year, and I think he's in such a crucial and interesting, fascinating part of his development where he's really transitioning from a play finisher to a play initiator. And those are two completely different skills when you're being asked to be responsible for generating offense for an entire 5-man unit compared to being the guy that, that's the end result of the play, that corner three or the duck in and dive to the rim. Where are you seeing sort of where he is right now in terms of still being able to prioritize the defense, but also having that responsibility on his shoulders? And, it's not going to be a straight line linear upward trajectory from him.
I mean, and like you said, I think that is really kind of the crux of the point with Lou is that, he needs to maintain his elite skills on the defensive end. And like that's where his bread is buttered. That's where the Thunder need him to be elite. And because you're starting to package together some of these other areas, which Lou has grown exponentially in over the last couple of years, it can't come at the expense of what you do so well. So I think Lou, to his credit, has done a great job of that. I personally have not seen any kind of slippage on the defensive end from Lou Dort. I think he's as effective as he ever has been. But he is, I think you put it really well, Nick, that to go from a guy that basically was waiting in the corner for somebody to find him to now somebody that is initiating pick and roll. He's got the ball in his hands. That just diversifies your offense in so many different ways when it doesn't just have to be SGA just pounding the ball, bringing it up the court with a finger up in the air, calling a play.
Right.
It can be so many different levels. And, so many people in basketball talk about when you randomize the game, defenses don't know how to defend you.
Right.
They can scout floppy. They can scout horns down. I mean, like they know those things and they can be prepared for those things. But when you flip the switch on them and you put the ball in the hands of Lou Dort and you invert a pick and roll or whatever it might be, that throws the defense for the loop. And so I think that it could be a crucial thing for OKC.
All right, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, we're going to bless your timeline and we're going to tell you what's on tap.
This is Jerome, and you're listening to Thunder Basketball Universe.
Okay, it is now time to bless your timeline, and something that came out of that road trip in Los Angeles was a little bit of singing, a little bit of an Australian accent on that singing as Josh Giddey serenaded his fellow rookie Jeremiah Robinson Earl with a happy birthday song at the Thunder's practice at UCLA. And Jeremiah turned 21. The two Thunder rookies that were on the trip were involved in that. The two other rookies playing for the OKC Blue right now, Trey Mann and Aaron Wiggins. But Royce, just your thoughts on Jeremiah so far. He did not get a ton of minutes in that Lakers game, but to turn 21 and to be in there guarding Anthony Davis, he forced a turnover, he forced an air ball on back-to-back possessions. I mean, pretty good work by a guy that's an undersized big trying to go up against a 7-footer.
Well, my biggest takeaway is that he had the best Halloween costume of all time, maybe, with his squirrel outfit.
Yeah,
if you didn't see that.
Jeremiah Robinson Squirrel is his new name.
Oh, that's good. But that was tremendous. That was a great sequence of events for him coming back with the picture and showing everybody his outfit. But I think for him early in his career, we spent a little bit of time talking about him a couple weeks ago, Nick, is that he's such a compelling young player in that he does so many things well. As we've talked about with a lot of these guys, I think there's a running theme here about what kind of makes up a Thunder player right now. But he was so effective in his first start, which I believe was against the Warriors, right? That was the first, or was that against?
Yeah,
started
against the Warriors. Yep.
And he played really well, and I think he made a really big impact early in the game. Stepped out, hit a couple perimeter jumpers. He had that really nice dunk in transition. But I think kind of over time, where you want to see some growth from him is clearly he's going to be asked to do a lot of different things defensively.
Right.
He's going to be playing the 4 and the 5, and he's an undersized 5. But he is somebody that plays with the physicality, and I think that he can play bigger than his frame is. And that's what I think he's going to be asked to do over time, is to really kind of sort out how to guard some of those bigger players. But, I think he's going to be just an extremely versatile defender because he can move his feet well and he can guard multiple positions. But, I think for a young player, he's an impressive passer. You can put the ball in his hands. He connects the offense on both sides of the floor. So, for a guy that is coming in the league as a second-round pick, he's basically a first-round pick.
Right.
When you're drafted 32nd overall,
you're splitting hairs here.
Yeah. You could have easily went in the 20 to 30 range. You just were drafted at 32. So, I think he's really kind of just come in, and I think he's one of these kind of upside guys for the Thunder at where they got him.
Very polished for only being 21 years old. You look around the league and some other players that are that age and not nearly as many of those sort of professional habits that you're seeing from Jeremiah. And as you say, he's still got some runway to go, especially if that shooting continues to evolve. He's or small sample size, I know, but he's among the league leaders in terms of rookies in field goal percentage and 3-point shooting percentage. So,
and I think there's just going to be just a natural confidence that comes with it.
Yeah.
And for him playing on a young team, I think he's obviously going to have a lot of opportunities. But the more reps that he can get, where I think there's been a couple moments, and I think Mark Daignault has said so too, where he could have taken a shot that he turned down. And some of that is situational, where you're looking at the shot clock and you're trying to figure out, is this the best moment? And for young players, I think sometimes you don't just play the game, you kind of think too much.
Right.
And all that's going to begin to slow down the more he plays. And some of those moments where he's kind of hesitating and not totally sure what to do, I do think that is one area that JRE is really good, is that he doesn't hold the ball.
Right.
And I think a lot of young players sometimes do that, is that they're trying to go, okay, what do I do with it now? But he makes quick decisions, which I think is really impressive.
Well, we just mentioned him earlier, but Josh Giddey, he makes very quick decisions as well. As we turn to what's on tap for this team, Josh will be facing another Josh Primo of the San Antonio Spurs, the two youngest players in all of the NBA. Josh Giddey is the second youngest. Josh Primo of the Spurs is the youngest player, still only 18 years old. The Thunder and the Spurs will play at Paycom Center on Sunday evening. That's a one-game homestand for the Thunder before they ship back out to New Orleans later in the week. But as you've watched Josh play, he's ranks, I think, in the top 7 in like 5 different offensive categories. He's leading all rookies. I'm sorry, in terms of rookies, he's leading all rookies in assists. He's up there in rebounds and points as well. What's put him at such a young age, and only 19 years old, sort of in that prime territory with the other rookies?
He's just doing more things, Nick, than I think a lot of people anticipated. I mean, we saw it against the Clippers, the pull-up jumper over PG, and then not only does he hit that, but then he responds a possession or two later, and he takes PG right off the dribble right to the bucket. That floater that I think Josh has is a real big weapon for him in just the way that opposing defenses want to guard him. But the thing that just stands out so much to me is, we can talk about things like court vision and passing. It is one of those things that you just can't coach. It's just a natural born talent. And Josh Giddey sees the floor in such a unique way. There's been so many, he had a pass back Dort, I think Baisley last night, where he threw him open. Like Baisley was not open. Josh Giddey just threw the ball into space, and there was just this chemistry connection between him and Baisley, where I think Anthony Davis was guarding Baisley. And Josh basically said, Baisley's got AD on his hip a little bit. I'm going to throw it into space, and I'm going to trust that Baisley's going to grab this and finish it. And for a 19-year-old rookie to have that kind of feel is really unique in my mind. And, it's so much like a quarterback just throwing receivers open. And seeing space, seeing an open spot in the field, and just saying, I'm putting it there, and they're going to go get it.
Yeah, and either the youthful confidence or the confidence of enough times doing it that you can throw a one-handed baseball pass on a sideline out-of-bounds play all the way to the opposite corner for a wide-open Baisley three as well. I at least 10.
I mean, I couldn't get enough of that one. That was so cool. I mean, just the velocity on that thing. Like, he looked like Aaron Rodgers, just like uncorking one right there.
Those types of plays, we see it from Shai, we see it from Lou Dort, we see it from Josh, we see some of these moves from Baisley too. Like, those are the reasons that you want to be there in person to watch these guys play, especially in their formative years when you're seeing these glimpses in these moments of like, holy cow, they're going to be something special down the line.
Yeah, it's one thing to jump on board when, if fingers crossed, Josh Giddey's, going to like his third or fourth All-Star game or something. But if you were there to watch it, like I remember against the Lakers when he had 3 straight awesome passes and that 26-point comeback. I mean, that just, it develops such a connection to the player where you feel just kind of emotionally invested in their career and in their development. To me, that's just always one of the, I know I harp on this all the time, but I do love like the developmental aspect of it. It's like when you can see players get better, and we've talked about this before, Nick, is it sometimes it's not so dramatic. It's just
Right.
kind of this incremental game by game thing where a player starts to learn a little more efficiency, or they don't turn the ball over quite as much. But when you can kind of start to see it, even as a fan, it just starts to click for you going, oh my goodness, this guy's good.
Right.
Like that is such a fun light bulb moment as a fan. And to me, it's just worth being around for.
Yeah, it's the reason why the Batman trilogy started with Batman Begins, not with The Dark Knight.
Good point.
All right, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to tune in on Monday for our next episode, and to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, be sure to watch us on YouTube here in our lovely studio. Thanks again to our producer, Matt Bishop, and until next time, thunder up and catch you later.